We live in a world that is more connected than ever. Yet paradoxically, many people feel lonelier than ever before. Our phones keep buzzing. Notifications constantly flood our screens. We can talk to anyone, anytime. But behind all of that, there is an emptiness that is hard to explain. Have you ever felt lonely, even in the middle of a crowd? Have you ever wondered why, despite the world feeling so busy, there is a void that cannot be filled? Today, we are going to break the myth of solitude and loneliness. We will see them not as a curse, but as something that holds a deeper meaning. Because perhaps, what we have always considered a weakness is actually the greatest strength we possess. Loneliness, an enemy or a mirror. Since childhood, we were taught that being alone means being isolated, that loneliness is something to be avoided. Society instills the idea that happiness can only be found through social interactions and relationships with others. But let's take a deeper look at this. Loneliness is not always about the absence of others. You can feel lonely even when surrounded by many people. On the other hand, solitude does not mean loneliness. In fact, there are people who choose to be alone and find peace in their solitude. So, is loneliness our enemy? Or is it just a mirror reflecting what is truly happening within us? Loneliness is not merely an external condition. It is something that comes from within, something profound. And this is what many people fail to realize. Loneliness can be a window to a deeper understanding of ourselves. Imagine the world we live in today. Everything moves so fast. Social media constantly showcases the lives of others, creating the illusion that we must always be connected to other people. But this leads to an unnoticed trap. We become accustomed to external distractions and begin to fear silence. We feel anxious if there is no one to talk to, even for a moment. We constantly seek validation from others, as if our worth depends on their attention, rather than on the feelings that grow from within ourselves. But the real question is, are we truly afraid of being alone? Or are we afraid of facing ourselves? If we have always seen solitude as something frightening, maybe it's time to change the way we look at it. It's time to shift our perspective on loneliness and solitude. Remember, solitude is not a punishment. It is a space to think, to understand, and to truly know who we are. Solitude can be the place where we find true freedom, free from expectations, free from social pressure, and free to be ourselves without needing anyone's approval. But how can we make the most of solitude? That's what we will explore further today. Because if we learn how to use solitude wisely, we can transform it from something terrifying into something truly valuable. From the previous discussion, we've come to realize, at least a little, that solitude is not an enemy. Instead, it is a space to think, to understand ourselves, and to discover true freedom. But how do we truly make the most of it? How can solitude become a strength that helps us grow, rather than just a burden in life? Now is the time to see solitude not as something to fear, but as a tool to build the best version of ourselves. Starting with solitude and mental clarity. Have you ever noticed that some of your best thoughts come when you're alone? When the outside world isn't interfering? When there's no noise except for your own thoughts? Something extraordinary often emerges on its own. In this age full of distractions, mental clarity has become a rare commodity. But solitude gives us the opportunity to achieve it, helping us uncover our best thoughts. When we are truly alone, we have the freedom to do everything, such as observing our thoughts without interference. What do we truly desire? What makes us restless? What have we been ignoring all this time? Through solitude, we can also reflect on decisions more effectively. Without the intervention of others, we can view problems from a clearer perspective, discovering solutions that might have been unthinkable before. Many great ideas are born from moments of solitude, and perhaps this is why philosophers, scientists, and great artists throughout history have spent so much time in silence and solitude. Not because they dislike the outside world, but because they understand that solitude is the place where mental clarity becomes most optimal. Then, solitude can also be a catalyst for extraordinary creativity. There's a reason why many great artists and writers produce their best work in solitude. Because in reality, when we are alone, our imagination has the freedom to expand without boundaries. Without external distractions, we can dive deep into our own minds, where great ideas are buried. Solitude forces us to explore our inner world. Without external influence, we begin to see things from a fresh perspective. Loneliness often gives birth to creativity. Some of the most emotional works of art come from experiences of solitude. Because when we are alone, we are more honest with our own feelings. If you've ever felt bored in solitude, perhaps it's a sign that your imagination is waiting to be used. Solitude is not just a space for thinking, it is also a space for creating something extraordinary. And then, one of the most valuable gifts of solitude is emotional independence. Many people don't realize that they rely too much on others to feel happy. They seek validation, attention, and recognition, as if they are nothing until someone else acknowledges their existence. But what if we could find happiness without depending on anyone? What if we could feel complete, even when we're alone? This shouldn't be something impossible to achieve, because solitude teaches us that we don't always need others to feel whole. We can enjoy companionship, but we can also enjoy being alone without feeling empty. We have the strength to face life on our own. This doesn't mean we should reject help, but we won't panic if no one is around. When we are comfortable with solitude, our relationships with others become healthier. We no longer seek someone out of fear of being alone. But one day, we will seek others purely because we genuinely want to share life with them. The person who can embrace solitude is the one who is strongest emotionally, because they understand that true happiness doesn't come from outside, it comes from within. The next important point: solitude as a path to a deeper self-understanding. Perhaps the most valuable thing we can gain from solitude is a deeper understanding of ourselves. When we are alone, we are no longer hiding behind social roles. We don't need to be someone that others expect us to be. We simply become ourselves. And at that moment, we begin to understand what truly makes us happy, not what others say, but what we genuinely desire from the deepest part of our hearts, what our greatest fears are, and how to face them without running away, who we really are beneath all the expectations of the world. All of this can only be found when we are alone, with nothing but our own thoughts. Remember, solitude is not merely time spent without others. Solitude is a mirror that reveals who we truly are. And only those who dare to look into that mirror will truly understand themselves. We have now understood how solitude can become a great strength in our lives. It grants us mental clarity. It sparks hidden creativity. It builds emotional independence. It opens the path to deeper self-understanding. Solitude is not something we should avoid. On the contrary, it is a tool we can use to grow and evolve. However, this understanding will only have meaning if we begin to apply it in real life. So how do we implement all of this? How can we use solitude as a real strength in our daily lives? That's why we need to discuss this very crucial part. Because remember, solitude is not the end of everything. It is the beginning of a greater journey. Straight to the important point. How can we apply all of this in real life? How can we turn solitude from just a theory into a real strength that we can fully utilize? This is the final step of our journey this time. The first step, of course, is to accept solitude as a part of life. Stop seeing solitude as something to be avoided. For so long, most people have viewed solitude as a sign of social failure, as something shameful. But think about it again. Surely, many valuable moments in your life happened in solitude. Moments when you truly thought, felt, and understood something deeply. The strongest and most independent people in this world are not those who are always surrounded by others, but those who can stand tall, even when they are alone. Solitude doesn't mean we have to isolate ourselves from others. Rather, solitude means we are no longer afraid to do things alone. Accepting solitude doesn't mean rejecting social connections. It's more about understanding that togetherness is a choice, not a forced necessity. And that gives us true freedom. Next, using solitude as a time for growth. Once we have accepted solitude, the next step is to use it wisely and in the best way possible. Don't let that precious time go to waste. Use your solitude for self-reflection. Ask yourself, what do I truly want in life? Have I been living according to the values I believe in? And many other questions you can ask yourself and your heart. Then, use your solitude to learn new things in life. Solitude is a golden opportunity to develop skills, read books, or learn something we never had the chance to before. Expand your creativity as much as possible. Many of the greatest works in history were born from moments of solitude. Use this time to write, paint, or create something more meaningful. Use your solitude to build strong mental resilience. The more comfortable we become with solitude, the stronger we are in facing life. We no longer fear silence. We no longer seek validation from the outside world. And the final key point is finding balance between solitude and togetherness. Although solitude has many benefits, we are still social beings. There are times when we need to be alone, but there are also times when we need to share with others. This balance is what matters. Don't be afraid to enjoy your time alone, but don't shut yourself off from the people around you either. Build meaningful relationships, not just to escape loneliness. Use solitude to understand yourself, so that when you're with others, you can be present in a more authentic way. Solitude and togetherness are not opposites. They are two sides of life that complement each other. And they only become truly meaningful when we find balance between them. So in conclusion, solitude as a beginning, not an end. Solitude is often seen as something sad, but now we know that's not true. Solitude is the beginning of a journey to understand oneself, to build emotional independence, to uncover hidden potential. And in the end, solitude is not about being away from others. Instead, solitude is about finding peace within yourself. Because only when we have made peace with ourselves can we truly connect with the world without losing who we really are. Now, the question is yours to answer. How will you see solitude after this? Will you continue to avoid it? Or will you start using it as a strength? Because one thing is certain, solitude will never truly disappear from our lives. The only thing we can do is learn to make peace with it. And when we succeed, solitude is no longer an enemy, but a friend, a space, a beginning for something greater